Hello everyone, here's a discussion on the metric system. Okay, what you see on the board here is somewhat of a shortcut, or maybe it's just a diagram to show how the metric system all relates. So a little bit about the metric system before I get started into the actual conversions. The metric system is it's kind of foreign to us, but there is some immersion in American culture. The metric system is a international way that they convert or measure things. For example, there's liters. We have 2-liter bottles. We have, geez, oh Pete, I know soccer plays on a large field that I think is 100 by 50. I could be wrong on that, but that's meters. There's the 1,600-meter race. So track actually is all, since that's an international sport as well as soccer. They use the metric system. So it's out there, and the metric system is based off of the number of 10, or you could even convert that to 1/10 depending on the direction you're moving. So what we have here is this stands for meters, liters, and grams. Okay, meters, liters, and grams. But this could easily be seconds. This could be something called moles. We'll get to that in a second. But it could be anything. Anyway, so the metric system is again based off of the number of 10, and the way you interpret the metric system is that anytime you go to things that are smaller, you divide by 10, or excuse me, multiply by 10. Again, this is a little confusing. And anytime you go to things that are bigger, you divide by 10. Okay, and again, we're going to use this chart that you see in front of you as a way to interpret how to come up with what are called the conversion factors. Okay, so let's talk about things that are smaller. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the things I just underlined in green. Okay, so deci is 1/10 anything here in the meters, liters, grams, seconds, or moles. I'll refer to that. I'll use meters. Okay, so a decimeter is 1/10 of a meter. Or, since it's separated by a factor, excuse me, a 1 block jump, there's a 1 block jump there between the two, a 1 block separation, or they're at least you can say that they're adjacent. It's by a factor of 10, so it takes 10 of these to make one of these, since this is 1/10 smaller. Okay, so it takes 10 of them to make up 1 decimeter, excuse me, 1 meter. So in other words, 10 decimeters is equal to 1 meter. Okay. Now let's go a little bit smaller. Okay. Let's stick with bigger numbers here. So again, let's stick with a centimeter. Let's go with a centimeter. So centimeter and 1 meter. Now a centimeter, like a century, is 100 things. So you notice this is 1/100th a meter. Okay. So in other words, it takes 100 of these to make up 1 meter. Okay. All right, now, how many centimeters in a meter? Like I said, that's 100, okay? Or 1 meter has 100 centimeters in it. But now that's separated by a factor of 2 jumps or 2 blocks. So you could use this as adding zeros. So since there's a 0 here and a 0 here, just convert that down like this and put a 1 in front. That's a factor of 100, okay? Now, let's go one step further. Get rid of centimeters. Let's go to millimeters. Millimeters are 1,000. Okay, milli stands for 1,000. Centi stands for 100, and deci stands for 10. Okay, or 1/10, 1/100th, 1/1000th, I should probably say. Now, so this says that there's 1,000 millimeters that make up 1 meter. Okay. So if that's the case, where does this 1,000 come from? How can we interpret that from this chart? Well, add a 0 here, add a 0 here, add a 0 here, and you end up with 1,000. Okay? So anytime you jump blocks, you always add a 0. Okay? Now I'm going to ignore micro and mega and leave that for class discussion. Okay? So let's go one step. Let's go to the bigger stuff. Let's go to the bigger stuff. Okay? So again, we'll stick with this. Let's go to this again as 1. We'll stick with meters, okay? But again, this could be meters, liters, or grams. You could have a decimeter, a deciliter, a decigram, a decasecond, a decimole, millimole. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? So it works out anyway. So again, let's start here. So now if I go this way, and I'm talking about bigger things now, whenever I go this way, it's again everything's separated by a factor of 10. So again, it takes 10 meters to give us 1 decameter. So a decameter is pretty big. How big is it? It's 10 meters, okay? For us Americans, that's about, it's longer than 10 yards, but it's about the same. If you can think of 10 yards on a football field, that's about what it is. Again, it's a little longer than that. But anyway, so that's the size of a decameter, okay? Now, so it takes 10 meters to make up a decameter, okay? What about a hectometer? We don't use hectometer too much. But anyway, it takes 100. So again, it takes 100 meters to make up a hectometer. Now again, where do we get that from? We go add a 0 here, add a 0 here. So that comes down. Let's convert that. 2 zeros, that's 100. Okay? And the same argument, if I were to go to a kilometer, that's another 0. So if I were to combine all 3 zeros, that's 1,000. Okay? So that's the metric system, at least a quick discussion in how we're going to interpret this chart. Okay? As long as you keep track of how many spaces you're jumping, you can figure out the conversion factor. Okay? So what I mean by conversion factors is this. If I had 1 gram, that's equal to how many centigrams? Okay, take a moment and figure that out. Okay, well, centi means 100, so that means if this is separated by a factor of 2, that's 100 centigrams. 100, you always have to compare little things. You're going to have a lot of the little things and lesser big things. Okay, so 100 little centigrams and that make up 1 gram. Okay, or 1 gram has 100 centigrams in it if you wanted to divide it by centigrams. Okay, so here let's try some more conversion factors, and I'll leave blanks. And I'll make it easy for now, okay, in our discussion. So if I had 1 kilogram, how many grams is that? Okay, so again, you're always going to have a bunch of little things, and we'll compare it to one big thing. So in one big thing, I have a 1 gram, so how many kilograms, how many grams in 1 kilogram? So again, always count your jumps. 1, 2, 3 jumps, that's 1, 2, 3 zeros, that's 1,000 grams that make up a kilogram, okay? Let's do one more. Try a hard one, okay? If I had 1 decagram, by the way, deca is DA, and deci is D, okay? So those are what the prefixes mean. So if I had 1 decaliter, well, geez, Pete, if I had 1 decaliter, how many centiliters is that? How many centiliters is that? Again, you can pause the video anytime you want, but see if you can answer that question, okay? So if that's the case, always go to your small things, okay? You have 10, 100, 1,000. So if you had that, now it's 1,000 centiliters. So you'll notice that it's not, let me do this again, it's not 10 times 2 times 3, it's, notice what I just said, 10 times 10 times 10, or 0, 0, and 0, gives me 3 zeros, okay? 10 times 10 times 10 is 1,000. So any factor is not 10 times 3. This is 10 times 10 times 10, or 10 cubed. Okay? So just be careful that you're doing the math correctly. Okay? And then I'll show you a shortcut in class. But anyway, that's it. I'll end the video there. Okay? If you have any questions, ask me in class or let me know otherwise.